Imagine an ordinary day under the strong sun of inland Brazil, a day of hard work in the fields where routine is marked by the cycle of nature. Now, imagine that routine being abruptly, inexplicably broken by something not of this world. Welcome to Alien Cases. Today, we delve into a story that took place far from the big urban centers, in the small town of Balsamo, located deep in the countryside of the state of São Paulo, Brazil, back in 1987. A story told by simple, hard-working people whose lives were touched by a mystery from the skies. This is the case of Armando and Rosa and the UFO that hovered above their heads. Brace yourselves, because the details of this encounter are, to say the least, unsettling. And if you enjoy unraveling these enigmas with us, please hit that like button and share this video. Balsamo, São Paulo, Brazil, 1980s, in a quiet town with just over 9,000 souls according to more recent estimates, but even smaller back then. A place where everyone knows each other and life follows a peaceful, almost unchanging rhythm. It's in this setting that we find Armando, Rosa, and their son, a humble family with roots firmly planted in the land they farmed. Their colonial-style house breathed simplicity. There wasn't a vast library of science fiction, nor the constant influence of movies or TV shows that could plant fantastic ideas in their minds. These were people connected to the tangible reality of the countryside, to the daily work on their large farm, where they grew, among other things, the beans that helped support them. They were well known in the community, seen as honest folks, with no apparent reason to invent such an extraordinary story. And it is precisely this simplicity that makes their account even more intriguing. Armando's routine started early. Before the sun could beat down with full force, he was already out working, tending to the crops, a strategy to escape the midday heat and ensure most of the work was done before the lunch break. On September 4th, 1987, a day that would be forever etched in the family's memory, Rosa decided to join her husband in the fields. It was shortly after 11 a.m. when the couple, tired but satisfied with their work, began the walk back home, looking forward to a well-deserved rest and meal. The sun was high, the day was proceeding normally, until something shattered the normality. It was Rosa who noticed it first, a strange shadow dancing on the ground ahead of them. But it wasn't an ordinary shadow, like one from a passing cloud. This one seemed to have intent. At the same time, the low vegetation began to move unusually, as if an invisible, focused gust of wind was carving a path through it. In Armando's words, it made a line on the ground. Intrigued and with a strange feeling, Rosa called her husband's attention. Armando instinctively looked up, and what he saw defied all logical explanation. Hovering above them, perhaps about 65 feet high, was an object. It wasn't a plane, not a helicopter, not a balloon. It was something else, something silent, moving with baffling agility, sometimes drifting away slightly, sometimes drawing closer again, as if studying them. Fear gripped Rosa. A scream escaped her lips. My God, what could that be? Almost as if in response, The object shot over their heads. The speed was staggering, far exceeding any known aircraft. But the most frightening part was the silence. No engine noise, no vibration in the air, just swift, ghostly movement. After moving away slightly, the object began an incomprehensible light show. First, an intense red glow, then blue, and then white. It hovered motionlessly while emitting these lights, only to then resume its erratic movements, darting in various directions across the sky in an impossible dance. Rosa's terror was palpable. She decided she needed to take shelter to return to the, perhaps illusory, safety of home. Armando, however, was taught fear, wrestled with an overwhelming curiosity. What was that thing? Where did it come from? He needed to see it closer. "Go home, Rosa. I'm going to follow it, try to see what it is," he said, determined. As Rosa hurried away, Armando began to track the object across the property, but the task proved frustrating. Every time he tried to get closer, the object changed direction abruptly, zigzagging through the skies above the farm, always maintaining a calculated distance. This silent chase, this cat-and-mouse game between a farmer on foot and an unknown flying machine lasted for at least 4 long minutes. At times, the movements were so sharp, so violent, that Armando got the impression the object was about to lose control and crash. It would dive towards the ground, stop suddenly in midair, hover for moments, and then restart its incomprehensible aerial dance. Finally, after minutes of evasive maneuvers, the object seemed to change tactics. It moved about 50 yards away from Armando and began to descend. It slowly lost altitude, stopping just feet above the ground, floating silently over the earth. Armando watched, holding his breath. There, closer, he could better make out its shape. The bottom part was rounded, smooth. The top had a more oval shape, like a dome. And then something happened. The object tilted slightly, turning part of its top towards Armando. At that moment, it began to glow again, but differently. A reddish luminescence seemed to emanate from it, creating, according to Armando, something like an invisible crystal ball around it, a sort of protective field that gently vibrated. Driven by a courage he didn't know he possessed, Armando took a few more cautious steps towards the floating object, and that's when he saw them. Inside that impossible structure, through some transparent section or window, there were occupants. 2 beings. They had a shape reminiscent of humans, humanoid. The most striking feature was their eyes, large, elongated, with an appearance Armando described as like goggles. He couldn't tell if they were actually eyes or some kind of protective visor. They had black hair and wore clothing that seemed made of a thick material, completely black and closed up to the neck, covering the part of their bodies he could see. Were they there, inside that silent machine, observing him? Time seemed to stand still. Armando, the farmer from Balsamo, stood face to face with the inexplicable, observing beings of unknown origin inside a silent craft floating above his land, a scene that challenged everything he knew about the world. But this tense moment of eye contact was suddenly interrupted. Approaching along the dirt road leading to the farm was Armando's son riding a horse. He also saw the strange object hovering near the ground. The instant the boy's presence was noted, or perhaps it was just a coincidence, the object reacted. Without warning, without a sound, it shot straight up or towards the sky. The speed was so extreme, it was like the blink of an eye. 1 second it was there, floating near the ground. The next, it was just a distant speck disappearing into the vast blue. It was gone. The object never returned. But the experience left deep scars on Armando and Rosa. In the days that followed, Armando confessed he went to the fields with a certain apprehension, constantly scanning the skies. Rosa spent days frightened, absolutely certain that what they saw was not natural, not of this world, something she couldn't explain but would never forget. The story, told by word of mouth in the small town of Balsamo, eventually reached the ears of researchers from INFA, Brazil's National Institute for the Investigation of Aerospace Phenomena. The couple, despite not seeking notoriety, agreed to give an interview recorded on video where they recounted with disarming simplicity and honesty what they experienced that September morning. This case, though not as famous as others, joins a wave of sightings of occupied UFOs reported in Brazil during the 1980s. What did Armando and Rosa truly see? Were they really occupants from another world? The simplicity of their account, the lack of any personal gain, and the genuine fear they felt speak volumes. On that quiet morning in Balsamo, Brazil, the extraordinary touched the lives of an ordinary family, leaving behind more questions than answers, a mystery that endures to this day. What do you think happened on Armando and Rosa's farm? Leave your theory in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Alien Cases for more unexplained stories like this one. Until next time.